This upcoming season for Jaylen Waddle could very well be the very best of his NFL career, culminating in what I believe could be an all-pro season for the Waddle. All right, welcome into the Broncos Breakdown presented by Prize Picks. Hanging out with your guy Moose. Use code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. There is a comparison that I want to bring up on today's episode that I believe could be a foreshadowing to what this year looks like for Jaylen Waddle. This player that I'm going to bring up broke out in 2025. And I don't even think that Jaylen Waddle needs to break out, but I don't think we've seen the full scope of what he can be. One, because of his quarterback play, and two, he sat behind Tyreek Hill for a long time. The player in question that I'm talking about is George Pickens. I believe Waddle is in for a 2025 George Pickens loading style of season, because what he was able to do, Pickens that is, was magnificent last year in the Dallas Cowboys offense. So I'm going to break it down from point A all the way to point Z on this episode. But before we do that, we're going live tomorrow. It's a weekly thing that we try to do. I mean, not every week do we go live because of scheduling conflicts and stuff, but we are going live tomorrow. So if you want to join tomorrow and you want more live shows throughout the regular season and the playoffs and then hopefully a Super Bowl, subscribe right now. Click that little free sub button. It will not cost you a thing. All right, let's talk about George Pickens. Let's look at the box numbers, though, because that really tells the tale of just how good he was. 93 grabs, 1,429 yards, 15.5 a pop, 9 touchdowns with only 4 drops. I think it's safe to say if you were a casual and only knew what his season looked like from a numbers perspective, you would have said he was one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. For the people that are a little bit more into the advanced analytics, he was the number 1 wide receiver by a long shot against man coverage. Meaning, if you go one-on-one with George Pickens, you're going to lose that battle more often than not. I mean, 110 more yards than the next nearest guy, which was Zay Flowers. And also, look, CeeDee Lamb, his running mate, is on this as well. But did you know it also goes beyond that? Did you know he was the second most in the NFL in 140-plus yard games? With 3, only behind Puka and 1 behind Kendrick Bourne, and then a bunch of others that came in. There's like 4 others that tied with Kendrick Bourne. It's not about George Pickens, though, right? We're talking about Jaylen Waddle. We really saw, though, the full scope of George Pickens' talent last year, who he is as a complete player, a player with a good quarterback. I fully expect the exact same thing from Jaylen Waddle, who is coming off of an entire career playing with, and I'm not disparaging Tua fans here, Tua, who stunk last season. And if you were like, Tua's not that bad, he got cut, bro. $99 million cap hit. Like, he is not that great. He's fine. I think he's a bridge quarterback at this point, probably a low-end starter for the Atlanta Falcons. But look at these numbers. You mean to tell me Jaylen Waddle was going to succeed with this? 67% completion percentage. Okay, that's fine. 2,660 yards, 20 touchdowns to 15 picks. Like, what are we talking about here? He had an awful QBR. Waddle is exactly what Bo was missing, and vice versa. Waddle was what Bo was missing, and Bo was what Waddle was missing. They're going to complement each other very well. And there are more stats and more reasons for that coming up here momentarily. Now, before we get to that, I do have to remind you guys, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Listen, during the summer, I like to get out of the house as frequently as I can, and there's not many better ways to do that right now than to get out to see a ball game. So if it's like, I don't know, a Colorado Rockies game that you want to go see, maybe it's a tennis match or a golf tournament, or hell, if you want to be like me and the wife, we're going to see Nelly on August 8th. That's going to be a lot of fun. Your next set of tickets for whatever you want to do is on SeatGeek, and they've got you completely covered. They rate their tickets on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. And your next set of Denver Broncos tickets you can find, as you're seeing on screen, right there on SeatGeek. Look for the green dots. Green means good. Red means bad. And, of course, it wouldn't be a deal unless I had a code for you. So use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of Denver Broncos tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code CHAT10. Make sure, though, that you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you to our friends at SeatGeek. So what you're seeing on screen here is Jaylen Waddle's 2023 target heat screen. Basically, like every time he was thrown to, if he was targeted, this is where the majority of his targets came. As you can see, it's all over the field, but primarily the lighter side, which is where more of the heavy stuff, more of his targets came, was like right in the middle. And then you compare that to somebody like George Pickens. Now, this is since 2023, right? So a little bit different, but virtually the same thing. You're not seeing nearly as much over the middle of the field. You're seeing a lot up the sideline, right? You're seeing a lot deep balls. You're seeing a lot of that seam shot. You're not seeing a ton over the middle of the field, which tells you one thing. The type of wide receiver is different. Pickens is your boundary wide receiver, your jump ball wide receiver, your ultimate throw it up and let him go get it type of wide receiver. Jaylen Waddle is more of your fluid, middle of the field, yak style of player. Throw that ball into a soft spot and zone, let him catch it, and then he's gone. That's the type of player you're getting in Jaylen Waddle. Both very effective, both can be superstars, but just a different mentality. He's going to beat you one-on-one. He's going to beat you with the ball in his hands and his route running. But then the thought occurred to me, well, Pickens and Waddle might be different, but there is another player on the Broncos that Pickens' game kind of mirrors, and that's Courtland Sutton. Now, I think at this point, sorry, Broncos fans, George Pickens is a better player than Courtland Sutton, so it's actually kind of like George Pickens light here, but they have very similar games. In fact, Pickens and Sutton might be the same type of wide receiver, and then that led me to believe, well, then isn't Jaylen Waddle and CeeDee Lamb the same type of wide receiver? And oh my God, it is. It's the exact same. Look at CeeDee Lamb's heat chart. Does that remind you of anybody? Take a look. Here's Waddle's. And actually, you know what? You can kind of flash back and forth between these two, JD, just so that they get the full scope of what I'm talking about. Waddle doesn't have nearly as much up the sideline as a CeeDee Lamb does. But just look at how similar, where those light spots are. They're all over the middle of the field. So CeeDee Lamb and Jaylen Waddle have similar games. Courtland Sutton and George Pickens have similar games. That is the ultimate dynamic duo. It is. It's the perfect complement of each other. One's a boundary wide receiver, go up and get it type, move the chains. That's Courtland Sutton. Your home run hitter, your yak ability, comes from Jaylen Waddle. So that's where we're going to leave those two. Now let's move on to the wide receiver 3 battle, because this is arguably more interesting than what I just talked about, in my opinion, because we know that Waddle and Sutton are going to be your 1A and 1B. But then there's this kind of gap here where wide receiver 3 doesn't necessarily have a clear answer. You're basically choosing between Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, and Pat Bryant. And honestly, if you put gun to my head right now, my money's on Pat Bryant. I really do believe that. Here's why. Take a look at Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant. And Troy Franklin was supposed to be the wide receiver 3 coming into this, mini camp and this offseason and stuff. But Pat Bryant, 36 routes to Troy Franklin's 30 after week 13. And then week 14, Bryant's 27 to 16. Now, Bryant didn't play, right, because of the whole hamstring injury and the concussions started to pile up. And then, again, week 16, after he was slowly starting to get integrated back, it was almost the exact same as Troy Franklin, meaning what? They were more comfortable putting Pat Bryant onto the field and having him run more routes than Troy Franklin. And there's a reason that we drafted Pat Bryant. It's because he reminds Sean Payton a lot of Michael Thomas, which he said right after Pat Bryant got drafted. Shout out to Ben Albright for that little excerpt. So the point now remains. Do the Broncos have one of the best trios in the National Football League. I don't think we can go as far as to saying that yet because we don't know what Pat Bryant's going to be, but I certainly do love the game. It's so silky smooth. It does remind me a lot of Michael Thomas. You know, Michael Thomas was never going to be a barn burner. He was never going to be the boundary player. He was always going to beat you with his footwork and his ability to get open within 5 yards. Now, I've got the final analytics coming up on Pat Bryant here in just a little bit and ultimately what my take is. Before I do that, though, I got to remind you guys, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. I cannot believe it. I won. I did. I swear to God, I'm going to show you what it looks like on screen right now. It has been a minute since I got all greens, baby. So I won some real cash while playing Prize Picks. This is my lineup from yesterday. $12 lineup to win $60, and I'm feeling like Donald Trump, y'all. I'm just stacking these papers. But that leads me into my Prize Picks question of the day for you. See how we're doing a little something different here. How many receiving yards will Jaylen Waddle have in 2026? More or less than 849.5. And I broke it down with my picks. So here's what I've got for my futures. I've got more on the receiving yards, 849.5, and certainly more than 5.5 touchdowns. I put that number at about 7 or 8. Yours can look just like mine, and if you want to make these picks, you can copy this in a single click in the new social feeds feature, or you can just make yours yourself. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code HMA to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So looking back at what last year entailed, I think every Broncos fan, including myself, said the exact same thing. You need to stop the drops. And look, I think Pat Bryant has great hands, right? 3 drops last year. Troy Franklin led the Broncos. Actually, he and Courtland Sutton ended up tying for 8, or tying with 8. This wasn't even the full season. This was after week 12. I believe. So you're looking at, I think Pat Bryant finished with 4 drops total. He's got some of the best hands on the team. There's no doubt. And Sean Payton had glowing things to say about Pat Bryant before minicamp started. Here's what he said. He's a quick study. He gets it real fast. I think he has one of the best skill sets in his run after the catch ability because his feet stay on the ground when he catches it. He has strong hands in traffic. He's having a good stretch here. He's healthy. Certainly in year 2, he knows exactly what to do. There's a confidence about him, a maturity. You couldn't or wouldn't feel like he's a second-year player if you didn't know. This really is an embarrassment of riches here for the Denver Broncos. And I don't mean that tongue-in-cheek. I don't mean that I'm blowing smoke. Think about all the opportunities that this opens up because of Jaylen Waddle's addition. 4 players like Franklin, Bryant, Mims, Sutton. You're going to have to put your number 1 corner on Jaylen Waddle. You can't put him on anybody else. And if you do, good luck. It's malpractice by a defensive coordinator. But the only player that I'm still I'm not saying I'm wishy-washy on the player. I don't know what his defined role is going to be yet, and that's Troy Franklin, who, by the way, year 2 had an excellent season, right? Completely dominated his rookie year season stats. He came out, was easily your wide receiver 2 last year behind Courtland Sutton. But if there was an odd man out now, to me, it's Troy. I don't think they want to get rid of Marvin Mims. In fact, I think they see so much more value in Marvin Mims because of that special teams ability than Troy Franklin right now. And that's not a shot at Troy. But, where does he stand out amongst the Broncos wide receivers? Does that make sense? And he was asked about it. And he got candid, and he said it's tough, but that he's a competitor. Here's what he had to say, full quote. You got a guy coming in like that, Jaylen Waddle. Obviously, he's getting paid more than me, or whatever the case is. I feel like that's one of those, that's the thought of any receiver that any receiver has, when they get somebody coming into the receiver room, But I know me, personally, I'm always up for the challenge, competition. I think I'm hyper-competitive. I know what I can do out there, man, especially building off of last year. And I'm just building now with him there, trying to figure out my role on the offense now. And all of that stuff's been good. So if I were to venture a guess on what I believe his upcoming role is going to be, he's going to be that kind of combo slot player, which has been kind of primarily what he's done Through his first 2 seasons, his rookie season, 34.6% slot rate, and then last year bumped it up to 45.1. I think that's going to be somewhere right around the same. In fact, the 2 primary slot players are going to be Jaylen Waddle and Troy Franklin. You can move Jaylen Waddle anywhere. That's the great thing, is that, like Sean Payton said it himself, we're going to move him inside, we're going to move him outside, he'll play boundary, he'll play slot, he'll play everywhere. You can kind of do everything with Jaylen Waddle. You can put him as a motion man. Franklin, not big enough or strong enough, in my opinion, to play the boundary quite yet. But if you put him as the primary slot, he's so fast off the line of scrimmage, you almost certainly can create a mismatch if he's going up against like a bigger, slower safety or a nickel corner that's a little bit more pressing off the line of scrimmage. It was a lot. All right. We're going live tomorrow. Make sure that you are subscribed for everything that we've got going on here. As always, Broncos country, quick little mile high salute to end the show. Be cool.